Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome very much to our second annual Trustee Open Forum, which finalises the week of VocTech for us. Another successful week, I'm sure you'll all agree. Here we'll be exploring what makes the UFI board tick, meeting some of our trustees and answering your questions about the work of the UFI. Just to let you know, the meeting is being recorded, so you will be able to view this later online if you need to. There are some questions we've had submitted over the past couple of weeks that we'll be addressing, and there's also an opportunity for some question and answers. If you have a question, simply click watch on YouTube and then post questions using the chat. It's been another big year of uncertainty and challenge, and it will be great to hear from our trustees about their view about the impact on the world of skills for work. What do our trustees think? Well, joining us today, we have Dominic Gill, who's our Chair of Trustees. Many of you may have met him over the last week. We have Alex Cullen, who is the Chair of our Ventures Committee as well. We have Anthony Bravo, who is also on our Ventures and Audit Committees. John Scott, who we're hoping is trying to join us and will be able to join us during the course of the session, who is on our Audit Committee Chair and Investment Committee. Jeff Greenidge, who's also on Audit and Investment Committee. And we're also hoping that Julia will be joining us too. She's desperately trying to get through to us, but the tech is not working at the moment. But if she does join us, it will be very helpful to have Julia join us, as she sits on both the Ventures Committee and also is chair of our REMCO. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Rebecca Garrett-Waters, our Chief Executive Officer, who I'm sure you all know. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, this is the finale of a wonderful week of VocTech, which has been absolutely fantastic. And hopefully everybody who's watching now has had a chance to engage with something over the course of the week, because it has been absolutely fabulous. And to kind of the cherry on that particular fabulous cake is, of course, this Trustee Open Forum. So huge welcome to everyone joining us and exploring what makes our board tick and meeting some of our trustees. I'm really looking forward to hearing the conversation today. Yes, sorry, I don't think it's me that's pinging, so apologies if someone's pinging pinging in the chat. So as you know, we are hugely passionate about vocational skills and the technology that supports that. And one of the really important parts of the way that UFI works and the way that our strategy kind of gets delivered is our fantastic board. And they oversee our work, ensuring that we meet our legal obligations and we deliver our mission, and they give us advice and guidance and support and the benefit of their expertise as well. And we have a fantastically experienced board, and I'm really pleased that they are able to join us today, tech challenges notwithstanding. So on that note, it's probably time to welcome Dom into the conversation.
Hi there, Rebecca. Hi, Karen. How are things?
Pretty good.
Great to see you again. Thanks for joining us today, Dom.
Good. So I mean, firstly, I'm just going to say it's really good to be on this call, and we're going to be joined by what I call the board of many talents with our trustees. And I think all of us are super proud of being associated with and supporting and helping steer the strategy for UFI. And I think it's been an absolutely amazing week of VocTech this year. We've been able to showcase our amazing projects, venture funded companies in person this time. And one of the highlights for me was the VocTech showcase last night, where we're actually able to see 15 of our projects, but so many of our partners and friends, there in person, and actually really share what the week of VocTech means, and what VocTech, how that's helping the world of work and people who are furthest from that world of work as well. I think what it's also done, though, we're able to see the continued development of our strategic partnerships, which is really, really important. And we can't do this on our own. We never said that we can. We're always there as a catalyst. And I think by having these partnerships, we're able to maximise the collective impact between what all of us do, but then accelerate that pace of change. And I think accelerating that pace of change, especially now, and I think it's something we'll come to in a moment, is incredibly important. But something I said last night, for anybody who was at the VocTech showcase, the best highlight for me, apart from this call obviously, but the best highlight for me about the whole week so far was the Learning Technology Awards on Wednesday night, where we had 6 of our projects shortlisted. 4 of them won, and it was just great. And I was so pleased to be there and celebrate with, with not just the winners, but everybody who was nominated, because it was there's 900 people in the audience. I think there were, it felt like 1 million different awards, but everybody was fantastic. They did so well to get through. So yeah, I think it's been a great week so far.
Thanks, Bill. I think it is really nice to see that kind of recognition. I know quite a few of the organisations we work with are up for even more awards across the rest of the month. So really exciting to see that kind of validation of their brilliant work. And for me, that my highlight of the week was definitely yesterday, and the showcase and that opportunity to really feel the vibrancy of our community. And also to see all of you in person and alongside our projects. So yes, probably a good point to welcome the other trustees, I guess.
Hello, everyone, and thanks again for joining us today. Right, so we've got some pre-submitted questions that we'd like to start with. And Dom, I'm going to kind of start this one on you, just to get you warmed up nicely for our audience. So this has actually come from Louise Rowland, who, as you know, is our Deputy CEO. Her question is, do you think there is a risk that more people will drop out of learning or training because of the current economic turmoil?
I think it is a real concern. And as economic reality forces people to make more short-term decisions, that's not really necessarily going to help them. It's not going to help businesses make the right decisions for the future. And I think the challenges that we're here to address, and our partners here to address, they're absolutely being exacerbated by this turmoil. But it is, for me, one of the reasons why our work and our partners' work is so important, because if we think about it, technology, it can really open up access to opportunity and engage people with the training and the skills that they need, not only to do the job, but to benefit them and society in better ways, but in a really flexible way. So one that really fits their individual learning styles. But I think that, and that's great, technology is flexible enough to do that, but how we do this has got to be engaging. Now, I'd strongly urge anyone who hasn't yet done so to watch the discussion between Rebecca and Andy Haldane, CEO of the RSA, at the event last night. It was really good. It was really illuminating. And I'm not going to even attempt to plagiarise their ideas, but hopefully, I'll give my view and a summary of a couple of them. But I think that the conversation for me highlighted specifically the need to make learning fun. If you don't do that, it's really difficult to engage learners and ensure they're engaged in the first place, but also to re-engage those who've dropped out. So keep them in as much as we can, and the economic challenges at the moment are going to see people wanting to drop out, but if you keep it fun, keep it interesting, that they're going to learn. But also those who do drop out will want to get back in. If in a way you're actually the best learning can happen when you don't actually think you are learning. So I think digital for me really lends itself to that approach. Something else, though, I think related to this that Rebecca and Andy highlighted was that we really need to invest in our UK workforce now, absolutely more than ever before. And something I think it was possibly even Rebecca that you said, that people are our most valuable asset. So if you're going to buy a piece of machinery, like any valuable asset, you need to maintain and support it. Why shouldn't you be doing the same with your people? And one of the best ways to maintain and support your people and allow them to grow is to invest in their skills. And definitely that's going to need planning and coordination with not only business strategy and businesses themselves, but government policy as well, to enable these things to scale at not only a national but a local level. But for me, I suppose coming back to UFI and our agenda, digital can and will play a vital role in ensuring that this workforce is appropriately skilled, not only now, but skilling them to be that workforce of the future that we all need.
That's great, Don. Yeah, I think as you say, it's a real question that should be surrounding everyone. And of course, as well as the economic climate, there is, of course, the wider concern about the actual climate. Joseph Davis Coates asked an interesting question, which is, how is UFI responding to the climate and ecological emergency? As the good folk at Holdcraft put it, humanity has never needed to learn so much within such a short time frame. Alex, would you like to comment on that for me?
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, no, it's such an important question, isn't it? And the climate emergency isn't like that. That's not expressly articulated within the core UFI mission, but of course it affects all of us. It affects all of us personally. It affects all of our businesses. It affects all of our governments. So of course it's got to be a lens through which UFI views the world. And actually, UFI is in a relative position of power because we're essentially, we've got a large fund, and so where that fund goes, how that's invested before we spend it all has been a really big focus, actually. So Paolo, our outgoing deputy chair, has done an awful lot of work in terms of, ensuring that we're really, really granular about the impact of our fund as a starting point, and that fund is supporting positive, really positive next level ESG style investing. But then more widely in terms of the day-to-day scope of UFI, there's then the piece around our actions and what our approach is to funding. So there is no doubt that for the green economy to turbocharge, for there to be meaningful change around the climate crisis, an ecological crisis, that fundamentally there's got to be a whole load of new skills that go with that. So, I mean, everything from carbon accounting to there's all sorts of complexities into understanding the impacts of our business choices. That there's absolutely massive opportunities for vocational technology to support that, because it's a level of literacy that isn't baked into any academic institutions as a standard at the moment, let alone the kind of the wider numeracy literacy that we funded so many brilliant projects in. So I can see so many applications for the know-how, the expertise, that practical knowledge from UFI to continue to turbocharge that approach. And actually, I have to say, I started working with UFI in 2019, and back then, to join an organisation where everyone was remote and there was no central office, actually the organisation's come from a place where it's had a relatively small footprint to start with. So I think there's a lot of areas in which it's been ahead of the curve, not least its own kind of operating model as well. So yeah, of course, really interested to see how that continues to evolve and how we can continue to champion that in everything that we do.
That's brilliant, Alex. And I know that's a sort of personal interest for you as well. So moving on from sort of the global climate, one of the areas obviously that UFI is really interested in is lifelong learning. So the next question we have is VocTech accessible for all ages within the workforce? I'd like to open this up to all of our trustees. Perhaps, Jeff, if I came to you first, I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that.
Yes, thanks, Karen. VocTech clearly has this impression that it's ready for young people. But as someone who's worked within UFI from the outset back in 1999, what we saw there was that the majority of people coming into the programs were adults. They were adults in the workplace, and these were people who wanted that just-in-time piece of learning to help them to do the next step in their career, or to gain some new skill to take on to a new job. So it's absolutely right for particular groups of people at particular points in time in their careers. And you imagine people who've got a busy lifestyle. They're working, they're trying to study in part-time as well. So it worked absolutely well for them. And with the current trend towards things like virtual reality, with the tech being available on more different sort of platforms, it's absolutely perfect for a much wider population. I think part of the challenge, however, in ensuring that it's accessible and it is workable is around the education workforce as well. How can we ensure the education workforce actually is upskilled itself to support those learners throughout their careers? So I think absolutely it's for adults, it's for all ages, and that just-in-time opportunity is perfect for those who are looking to progress in their careers.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you. Any of our other trustees? Don, perhaps you've got a comment on that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and again, something that came up last night, that I mean, I'm now 50, so I'm classed as an older learner. Not that I obviously look it, I might add, but I think a really interesting point that Andy made was that we're actually, as a society, in a way, getting younger. Although it's an aging population, we've got more of our lives to go, or a lot longer than we've ever done. So there's a lot more people who are older, but still going to be productive, and have got lots of their life left when they've reached this, what obviously seems like a milestone age is 50. So, but if that is the case, there actually are going to be a lot of people who are actually quite au fait with the technologies anyway. And this isn't something that's, I'm thinking back to my grandparents who really wouldn't have got their heads around this at all. But, I think folks, all of us on this call, no matter how old we are, I think we do understand the technology. We at least understand the principles of how to use it. But I think more importantly, are open to engaging with the technology. And I think, reflecting Jeff's point, provided we can make that accessible, reflecting something I said earlier as well, and make it fun, there's no reason why this technology and VocTech shouldn't be applicable to everybody, whatever the age are.
That's great, John. I think, Anthony, you may have something to add to that.
Well, I was just going to say simply that we all know what silver surfers are. They exist, and they are a type, and they are a group of people who are becoming stronger. And as Dom has just said, it's a growing group. And lots and lots and lots of older people now are completely au fait with using the internet to keep in touch with their grandchildren and things like that. And it's, for many, just a completely natural step to go into some form of online learning. So, yeah, it's inevitable. It's a form of lifelong learning.
Thanks, Anthony. Alex?
Yeah, I think actually it becomes less about the technology in terms of what's going to drive the adoption and the kind of attitudes to technology, but more fundamentally personal attitude of, is this something that I would consider? Is it something I think I'm capable of? Is it something I've got space for in my life? And we know the flexibility that's offered with these kind of solutions means people have got that ability to navigate it around, but actually it's more fundamentally kind of just speaking to user-centered design, speaking to that target learner and really engaging them from the offset, because that's what will drive the take up. And then the second piece that has to go hand in hand with that is the accessibility of the technology just being available. So where we talk about the digital divide, like, have people got access to those devices? How do they reach them if it's not something that's within their own kind of grasp, and what are the channels that are going to make that available and relevant as an offer to them? So I think in that context, it's less about is the tech accessible. It's more fundamentally the mechanics of it, and really getting that user engagement right.
That's really interesting. And I think, all of you in the audience today, I'm sure you've all got opinions on, whether it is suitable for all ages. So if you do have any questions or comments, please do make sure you drop them in the chat. Anthony, if I can return to you, please. My next question is VocTech the future of vocational learning? I know you've got great experience in that area, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thanks, Karen. Before I answer that, I must go back to one of the questions earlier, which was asking about, is there a risk of learners leaving? And I have to say, as the principal of a college, I can unfortunately tell you they are. Second year courses where learners are adults, there has been the worst retention I've ever seen. So learners are consciously deciding to go into the workplace rather than complete their courses. So unfortunately, that risk is being realised. But looking onto the bright side, looking about VocTech being the future, VocTech is a tool of the trade. It's one of the many things which teachers will use in their armoury to actually face the challenges of getting learners to learn. And it's learners learning as opposed to teachers teaching is what we need to do. What I find is so brilliant is actually seeing the impact of the UFI activities in the learning environment. And I draw your attention to two in particular, which I personally love and I've got experience with. One called Sentry Tech, which uses artificial intelligence to make a personalized learning program in English and maths for any learner. And that sort of stuff, it takes so much pressure off of the teacher and it gives such a brilliant personalized program to an individual that they accelerate at the best and highest possible rate. So seeing that in practice is absolutely wonderful. At the other end of the spectrum, all the use of things like VR, again, we funded an organization called Body Swaps. And seeing the learners engage with that, seeing them using it for how to do interviews, them seeing how their posture comes across in an avatar in an interview situation was so powerful. But then with many of these things, you find the hidden gems. And I have to say that with Body Swaps, the thing I found was a wonderful product, or one of the courses was about EDI, equality and diversity, and about microaggressions. And actually seeing learners using that in the virtual world was, for me, phenomenal. So much so that I ended up using it as part of my inset day for all of my staff to be introduced to it, so as they know what techniques and products they've got around. So inevitably, things will come and go. But VocTech technology is always going to be with us now, and it's going to be various parts of it. Some will come, some will go, but we're always going to be having to use it now. And I just fear the day we have a blackout, because that'll make it a little bit harder for my colleagues to operate. But I have got batteries, apparently. I've got very big batteries.
Always good to have some backup.
Yeah, it is.
Anthony, I've got a question for you about the tech as well, because adoption is a big question for me. That, you know, if the technology is there, and when you've got users and more advanced users like yourselves at Basingstoke, that's great to hear. But did you find there was any, not necessarily challenge, but I suppose to phrase that in a slightly different way, how did you approach the adoption of the technologies with your staff? Because, you know, if they don't, I think Jeff also raised, if they don't understand it and don't get it, it's going to be even harder for them to then roll it out to the students. Yeah,
it has to be a planned e-confidence program. That's certainly what we had. For me, the most important thing is the leader of the organization must actually believe there is a value in doing it. If the boss doesn't believe in it, it's not really going to work. But then once you do have that belief at the leadership, then you need to find, as you know, champions. I was blessed by finding a chap called Scott, who's known everywhere, who was just evangelical about the use of technology to improve teaching and learning and to decrease teachers' workloads. And we set about doing an audit, what people's skills were, what they needed to do, what they weren't very good at, then set out a program to actually achieve those things. And at the beginning, I'll be honest, it was voluntary. You became a champion and you then went and shared it. By the third year, it was compulsory. You had to do these units. And then the following year is then part of the lesson observation process. So you was then being assessed on it. So you made sure you was doing it. And now it's just so embedded. And I have champions of different types from different products across the college. And those advanced practitioners share their specialty, Moat, ClickView. There's quite a lot of products which I see the staff using, which are all just exciting, but they could be different products in 3 or 4 years' time. So it's got to come from the top, find champions, do it gently to start with, then make it an expectation.
And it's in a structured way, as you're saying there. I think that's really important.
It has to, you need a plan, because if you don't have a plan, it won't really happen. And any plan to succeed needs some resource. And yeah, we put a bit of resource into it, but it's paid off. My staff are happier than they've ever been. Long may that continue.
Brilliant.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Faith. That's really raised some interesting thoughts, I think, especially for amongst our audience. Dom, you mentioned there adoption, and that leads us on to the next area that is really important to the UFI VocTech Trust, and that is to how to encourage adoption of VocTech. Jeff, I'd like to address this next question to you initially, if I may. What do you think is the key to encourage adoption of VocTech? Is that something I know that you as a Board of Trustees are really keen to look at and develop a strategy for the coming years?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I think it works with a number of levels, a number of contexts, the adoption. I think Dom mentioned earlier on learners and the fact that, you know, it has to be fun. It has to be something which meets a specific need of the individual at a particular point in time in their career, in their learning, in their job search. So it's got to be fun. It's got to be purposeful in terms of the learner perspectives, and it's got to meet the challenge that that particular person faces at that particular point in time in their work. You think of people at the moment looking to change jobs. You know, it's got to meet that particular need there and then. Then there's also about it being seen as being impactful. It's about demonstrating through doing, and that's the principle that UFI works upon. It's about that positive impact. So someone enjoys what they're doing. That's great. That's one level of impact. They've learned something. They've got the qualifications. Another level of impact. But then to see that that is then applicable in their life or in their work is a really third level of impact, which I think is where we're at within UFI. Then from a provider's perspective, it has to be seen as being an efficient way of delivering the learning. It's also got to be seen as effective in terms of delivering a quality learning experience for the learner. And I suppose the third aspect of one of the keys to adoption is from a policymaker's perspective. Do the policymakers, those who fund the learning, do they see it as something which is a value for money? Does it give them the outcomes that they require in the timescale that they require those outcomes? And does it provide the evidence base that says that it's sustainable and it's something which can be rolled out over a period of time? So I think, Karen, in response to your question, adoption is about being efficient, about being effective, and it has to work at the levels of the learner, the provider, and also the policymaker. One thing that we do try and do to ensure that the message gets out that these things are working is through partnerships. We can do a lot on our own. We can put the funding in place. We can establish the models of working. But unless a wide range of organizations see that it's effective, then we're not going to influence the policymakers. So partnerships, as Dom mentioned, with people at the Royal Society of Arts, that's really important because it shows that organizations who are working in adjacent markets, let's call it that, working in adjacent markets, can come together to do something together, which they might find difficult to do on their own. And again, the evidence base from those partnerships provides for advocacy. It provides for organizations to amplify our voice at government level, to amplify our voice at combined authority level within those mayoral authorities. So I think there are lots of steps. There's no one key. I think there are a number of steps that we have to take to ensure that our voice gets out there, and that a number of different types of organizations, different types of providers and individuals see that VocTech is something which impacts on their lives.
That's really interesting.
Really important. Yeah, I think another thought for me then, building on that last bit, is around the partners and how we operate, and it's kind of building that community of champions in all the different areas. Now, whether it's exemplars in the college sector or in providers like with Anthony, whether it's in other groups where they can use the reach that they've got to encourage the users, the learners to get involved. I think that's incredibly important, and I think especially in that practitioner area, in that provider and college area, the more that we can do with partners, we've got the evidence, so we'll fund the projects, we'll fund the technology, we'll make sure we can demonstrate that these technologies actually are relevant, are fun, and can scale. But I think what we then need to do, and what we're finding is becoming successful, and I think it'd be quite exciting over the next couple of years to see how this plays out, that working with our partners, let's really see how we can build those communities of exemplars and champions to really drive that adoption.
Yeah, one of the things I find was really fascinating about the whole UFI approach is that it's not just the public sector. We have public sector partners, we have private sector partners, we have some serious partners in terms of those working with banks, etc. We've also got voluntary organisations working with us. So it's that combination of the different types of partnership, which allows those who are putting projects in place, in a sense, to really understand the particular markets. I think it's quite unique within education and training. They get this breadth of partnership working on a specific challenge.
Yeah, no, you know, I think you've hit the note. The kind of commercial aspect of that is quite interesting because of what we do with ventures and investing in, the businesses that are actually going to be building, and then they have a huge vested interest in scaling this activity. Actually seeing them being brought into this equation and supporting them and seeing how that there are technology concepts that, yes, are going to grow these businesses, but these businesses in turn are going to help us deliver on the charitable objectives and the social and skills objectives that we've got. So I think that's, we're not bigging ourselves up here, but I think it's really interesting to have all of those components coming together, which is actually how the world works anyway. And let's keep doing what we're doing with all of those different players.
Yeah, to chip in there, and really to echo what both of you have said, this whole diverse range of partners is one of the absolute keys, and the clear impact, so that everybody can see things are making a difference. And I go back again, as mentioned before, champions. Those champions are transferable between sectors, because when they're passionate about something, they become evangelical. And it doesn't matter if you're talking to a bank, you're talking to a charity, you're talking to a college, it gets through and people can see what the benefits are to their own organisations. And that's how you really start to get a level of adoption.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I hope our audience out there, I'm still encouraging you to put forward some questions if you want, because I'm sure there's lots of these discussions are bringing up more questions for you. So it'd be great to hear from you. Moving on slightly from that is another area that UFI hasn't been involved with hugely in the past, but is something that we're looking at as a way of to encouraging adoption. And that is lobbying and campaigning the government. I'll ask all of you, do you feel that that is a way to encourage adoption? I know we've touched upon that briefly just now in the discussion, but it would be interesting to hear a little bit about that sort of area of activity that the trustees feel is a way to get ourselves heard in the community.
Yeah, I'll start us off on that one. Actually, I was talking about this earlier today. There's three pillars to society, aren't there? There's the state and government, there's the citizens, the individuals, and then there's the money. And I guess the work we do with the likes of ventures, where we're looking at kind of essentially impact investing and encouraging kind of that wider financial interest in terms of the innovation and the returns that are available if we back this kind of tech properly, is something that we're seeing as a real kind of recipe for success. But there's no arguing that fundamentally the state has got a really central role to play in terms of I guess just opening up kind of the broader levers in terms of driving adoption. So, I mean, you need a combination of all three for something to really, really turbocharge. And I guess the challenge that we've got at the moment is politically there's a little bit of a revolving door, which means you can lobby at one door 1 week and it might not be the same person behind the door the following week. And that in itself is a slightly fruitless task, because it's about how do we get through to the people that are going to drive meaningful change. And I suppose, yeah, looking ahead the next few years, it's that big question of where will stability and leadership come from, and who are the players that are going to be able to unlock some of that. And in some cases it might be directly to the government, but in some cases it might be to bigger organizations that have tentacles and connections of their own, that starts to pave the way for us, irrespective of the uncertainty of exactly who ends up in with the keys of power, as it were.
I'll add to that. Obviously, lobbying government has got to be one of the ways forward, because government, by the very nature of the levers they operate, can massively impact the uptake and the interest in anything we're doing. And anything government do which indicates that this is a good thing can make a massive influence on us. So yeah, we have to do that. And the way we do it, as we all know, is through our CEOs and the way they can get on and they convince people, which they do very well. And sometimes those little nuggets, those little bite-sized gems or examples which they can plant in these decision makers' minds can actually take root and sprout into all sorts of different things. Sometimes not what we expect, but nevertheless, we definitely can make an impact through lobbying. And I think many of us think on occasion, some decisions have been made purely on the result of lobbying. And if it's ours, that's very good. If it's something a bit strange, that's not always perfect.
Yeah, and if I may add into that, I think where we come in is providing that evidence, so that demonstration through doing to others, and that leads back to something I think all of us have talked about, the partners that we've got. So, and we've chosen who we have depth partnerships with really carefully for many, you know, for a lot of it for these reasons, because, you know, on our own we're a small voice, and probably don't have the scale and the resources to lobby everybody in government, precisely as Alex said, because we might be speaking to somebody one day and it's somebody completely different the next. Well, we wouldn't be able to scale in that way. But I think by working together and actually having that unified voice, working with others whose kind of main role is to work with various folks in Westminster, whether it be parliamentarians, whether it be civil servants, what we can do is absolutely provide that evidence to see that this stuff does work. It is great. It makes a difference. What we then need the regulators to do is to think about resetting regulations. So practitioners, colleges, you know, people who are going to adopt this technology, they can be more innovative, they can work in a more flexible way, and they can actually adopt this stuff at scale. Whereas I do think sometimes at the moment, whether it's over regulation or not, I'm not quite sure, but it does stifle that innovation. It makes people risk averse and afraid to not even take a risk, but to take something that's slightly different that they've done before. So I think, yeah, you know, all of the things, all of these elements that we've talked about are really important, but the lobbying, if we haven't got that right, it's just going to make things even harder, and the regulations and, you know, making sure that that policy is appropriate to drive the change that we need.
Yeah, and the lobbying is based on our ability to influence, doesn't it? And as you say, Tom, that needs a strong evidence base, which I think we're getting over time through the variety of projects that are coming forward. But again, it's about the evidence base has to be around the impact that is being made. You know, what's different? What difference is being made through the work that we're doing? And you can almost like see that as we were going through, I think Alex mentioned it, that from the private sector perspective, the private sector moves very quickly. They'll have ideas and get those ideas to market very quickly and demonstrate the impact of that particular level. Those community organizations that we're working with, they have the client base that we want to draw into learning, the adults, you know, from disadvantaged communities, etc. So partnerships with those organizations give us that strong client base. And then to take those back to government and say, well, we've got organizations here who are fleet of foot, who are working very quickly. We've got the client base coming through. Now, government, your policy is about sustainability. Why wouldn't you then build on this for sustainability over time? But I think you're absolutely right. The challenge we have is that we do need stability for a period of time in order to make some of these things, to give them the longevity that they deserve. You know, this revolving door of ministers isn't very helpful, and hopefully we'll have some sustainability over the next few years.
Yes, let's hope so, Jeff. I think that's across the whole country feeling that at the moment, I should imagine. Yeah, there's some really interesting points there, and I think, as you say, you know, the key things that are coming out are UFI's work, developing work in lobbying and partnerships. And of course, the evidence base is coming from the projects that we fund. And so that's, you know, they're super important to us. And we really hope that they continue to, you know, be able to provide us with that information and guide us with the area that we should be going in VocTech. Which brings us to, you know, what next now? You know, there's been huge changes this year, not just in government, economic climate, you know, the global climate as well. But we've had one question came through earlier from Hilary Stringer, who asked, are there any areas of emerging technology that the trustees are excited to see to come forward as proposals to UFI? Which and why will they be disruptive for disadvantaged learners. Now, the board all sit down and look at all the grants that come through, the applications that are proposed to them. So it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on those sort of emerging technologies that we've been seeing coming through recently. Don, would you like to start us off on that?
Oh, I was going to kick off
I know. I think Anthony. I was thinking I've got a point that may be more appropriate at the end, but
Anthony,
okay, that's good. See, teamwork makes the dream work, Dom.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was just
Thank you.
For me. I was going to say that one thing is we see ideas. I see ideas which I could never have imagined possible, and so that's the first thing. Just think about what is possible and then go for it, because clearly people are doing that and they are bringing ideas and concepts to us which I could never have imagined beforehand. So that is absolutely wonderful. And they cover a whole range of things. On a very personal level, artificial intelligence and chatbots are my latest absolute obsession. And now that I've started to look at them, I'm finding how far behind I am already. Like I'm just starting at the bottom of a climb up Mount Everest, it feels like. But for me, AI, the impact, I've seen it, like I said, with Sentry Tech, but I can see how it can be applied to so many other things. I think is just so powerful. And chatbots, which use AI, I think are going to change the way we do things in a lot of ways. Like we understand in call centers how they could work, but I think in terms of absolute basic learning in the future, I think we're going to find that we're going to have some basic learning being done by chatbots in the future. I really do, as well as answering so many other queries. So for me, those are the ones which are really getting me excited, and that's why I had to jump in first.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. I think you start to see that coming up everywhere, don't you? It's every part of everyday life, let alone in learning. Alex?
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, it's actually less about the tech and more about the human impact that gets me really excited. So I was speaking last night to the guys at Landex, like they're working on tech to basically build out health and safety for agricultural workers. It's the sector with the second highest mortality rate in the country. Like that's saving lives. That's literally saving lives, so that if people are in a dangerous situation with cattle, with the tractor going wrong, like all sorts of things like that, it's so impactful, the work in so many different areas. And I think that the same goes for the care sector as well. So I know we've talked a lot about jobs. I know there's been a lot of focus on kind of this kind of vocational learning as a way to drive the economy. There's lots of things that aren't valued in the economy in terms of unpaid care that again, vocational technology can really support people on, thinking of adult care, people caring for older family members, etc. Really, really powerful things that can make an incredibly challenging part of someone's life actually just that bit more manageable. And right the way through to mental health, we've seen some brilliant projects really providing that kind of I guess that rigor of daily downloads for people that are dealing, like within the NHS, that are dealing with incredibly emotionally charged and intense workloads, and having an app that helps them download their emotions at the end of the day, helps them process that and keys them up to be able to start again, and also ensure that they've got support and that they've got interventions and that they've got a wider kind of team around them that can support them. Like that's not about the tech, it's about humans that are doing incredibly pressurized things, and it's helping them cope with it. It's developing new coping mechanisms, and it's that side of things that I find most exciting.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, actually, because it's one area that maybe it's a sort of a great addition to what we're providing, and the funding we're providing is helping people in their daily lives and dealing with the stress. Jeff, do you have a comment on that?
Picking up on Alex and Anthony's point there with the chatbots and the people-centered nature of it, I just think there's so much potential in using the big data in things like, more consistent, less biased, a more scalable people decision-making processes in organizations around talent management, talent acquisition, and just think about the current state of diversity within and inclusion across organizations. We could have better, more qualitative metrics around, or a whole diversity and inclusion agenda. we can begin to monitor the impact and some of our efforts that we're using to increase diversity and inclusion within organizations. So I think that people-centered bit is really important. And the use of technology like Anthony's outlined there, and the data that comes from that will give us much more insightful measures around the state of our employees, the state of our leadership, and actually the culture of organizations going forward.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think probably picking up on everything that we've said, for me, it's actually not about what tech's coming next, because it really shouldn't be about that. The tech shouldn't lead this. It's about the problems. What are the problems and the challenges that tech could address? And I think as all three of you are saying, that how we approach projects, how we approach ventures is very much on this challenge concept. So we'll set a challenge, and then it's up to the people who are the tech experts to say, well, look, here's something amazing that could address this problem. We won't know what that technology is, and in a way we shouldn't. We're not tech gurus. We're not that we're not at the forefront of one of the big tech vendors. But what we do understand is this something that's actually going to affect and address the problems that we see in our daily lives? And we have got significant experience in these in addressing those problems. So I think for me, it's the exciting thing is seeing, based on what we think these societal and business challenges are, let's put it out there, and let's get these technologists to come up with something that we won't know about but could wow us, and actually is going to be something that really could be the next big thing to address these problems. But it has to be done at scale, and I think it's got to be adopted, because even something like VR, and I know you mentioned it, Anthony, with body swaps, VR actually has been around for ages. And I remember when I was at Microsoft, I mean, this must have been in 2015. I was at a Microsoft Partner Conference in Orlando, which was a very nice gig to have. But they were doing VR stuff with amazing, the VR goggles, and they're doing on a Harley Davidson bike, and they'd superimpose what this chap could see through the VR goggles on a big screen, and he just started ripping the bike to bits, putting on new things. That was in 2015, and it's still not been adopted yet. So technology is advancing all the time, as it should do. For me, it's more about the adoption, the challenges that it's going to address. We're here to do that. So we'll put those challenges out. We want to see some people coming up with some really innovative ideas.
Definitely. Well, if that's not a call to challenge our audience and prospective projects, I don't know what is. Our own chair saying, please come to us and tell us what you'd like to do, and let's see if we can work together. I think that's wonderful. Thank you for listening to us this afternoon. You've obviously all had your questions answered, because no one sent us any in the chat. But I really hope you have found the session really informative, and it's really inspiring for everyone who's part of the VocTech community to go out there and keep things going. And we've obviously learned today partnerships and adoption, encouraging adoption, are really, really key areas that not just ourselves but everyone we work with are going to be looking at in the coming years, to really push VocTech and keep it there for the people who benefit from it in their way of learning. So thank you, everyone. And once again, thank you all who have joined us for the week of VocTech. I hope you've had a fabulous week. I know the whole team at UFI have worked really hard and have hopefully delivered a fantastic program to you. I know I feel that way. And I really hope that you would like to join us next year. I'm sure we will be welcoming you to our week of VocTech in 2023. And in the meantime, please do continue feeding your thoughts and comments to us. And, it's something you can see our trustee board is really keen to hear from you and take all your comments on board. So with that, I'd like to say thank you all and goodbye for now. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.